Ghislaine was a key member in Epstein's orbit, but there are other people that worked for/with him that we haven't touched on yet. Follow me down the rabbit hole about these key players. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we are talking about the key players in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit. This is episode like 5 out of 7. I think I've narrowed it down to 7. We're gonna have one more episode out of this. That'll be Jeffrey Epstein, and then we'll have the Robert Maxwell episode, and then I think we're done with this. So we're almost there. Before we jump in, of course, I love to thank our sponsors. So thank you, Wise Wolf Gold, for sponsoring my podcast, guys. If you want gold and silver delivered straight to your front door for as little as $50 a month, go to rabbithole.gold right now. You can get precious metals delivered to your front door. It's so easy. We can't make it any easier. And if you want Bitcoin, go to Wise Wolf Bitcoin and you can buy your Bitcoin. And then you can also, if you have Bitcoin and you want to buy gold and silver, you can do that over there for no fee. So that's pretty cool. But let's dive in. We're going to start with Jean-Luc Brunel. He was a French model scout, and he began his career in the late 1970s working as a modeling scout for Karen Mossberg's agency, Karen Models in Paris. By 1978, he was the head of Karen Models. Sometime in the 1980s, he met Ghislaine Maxwell. Again, just like with Ghislaine meeting Jeffrey Epstein, everything's super up in the air. And I'm starting to wonder if that's like on Ghislaine's side and not on Epstein's side. Because at first I was like, oh, maybe Epstein didn't want it out there. No, I'm pretty sure it was her. After meeting Jean-Luc Brunel, she would eventually introduce him to Jeffrey Epstein. In 1988, he and his brother Arnaud founded the Next Management Corporation. The following year, the brothers, along with Faith Cates, formed Next Management Company. This was a global modeling agency. According to Next Management's website, the Brunel brothers did not help found the company. It says that Faith Cates and Joel Wilkenfeld founded the company. I did find that Faith owned a majority stake in the company and the brothers only owned like 25%. So maybe she left it off the website because they didn't own majority stake, or maybe she left it off the website because it looks really bad if she worked with Jean-Luc Brunel. I'm not sure it mattered all that much because in 1996, Jean-Luc split off from the company and Next Management Company then sued the brothers. So they didn't stay like cohesive at all. And maybe that's why they took him off. I don't know. Either way, according to the website, it doesn't say they ever owned it. The year before he left Next Management, he actually founded Karen Models of America because he had been the head in Paris. And then Brunel was included in a report by BBC One about abuse within the fashion industry in November of 1999. After that, he was banned from his modeling agency in Europe. This led to him moving to the US in the early 2000s. Like, I think the year 2000, he moved there. He relied on funds from his brother and business partner to get started again in the US, but by 2003, both left Jean-Luc kind of high and dry. In 2004, he started a new modeling agency with up to $1 million in funding from his good pal Jeffrey Epstein. This company was named MC2 Model Management, and he actually just transformed like Karen Models of America into MC2 Model Management because Epstein gave him all that money, and he opened offices in New York and Miami in 2005. Also, the name MC2 is a nod to Epstein because he was just like so obsessed with science. Companies such as Nordstrom, Macy's, Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, JCPenney, Kohl's, Target, Sears, and Belk all used this agency for their models. However, Virginia Giuffre alleged in a 2014 court filing that this modeling agency was just a cover for sex trafficking. It was a way that they could find girls and a way for them to send girls to jobs without it being weird. But these jobs weren't always necessarily like modeling jobs. They were just jobs. Sometimes they were massage jobs. MC2 officially dissolved in September of 2019, just a month after Epstein's death. But in 2019, Jean-Luc helped to create the identity models in New York City and One Mother agency in Kyiv, Ukraine. But Jean-Luc was not like this good guy. He was a bad guy. He was a bad guy before he was even corrupted by Epstein. He was never like this good guy, which unfortunately kind of seems to be the theme in the modeling world, is that like the modeling agents aren't always that great. So in 1988, he was the subject of a 7-month investigation by 60 Minutes called American Models in Paris. I watched the whole thing. Very interesting. I learned a lot about like the modeling world. I didn't share a lot of it here just because it wasn't relevant to what we were doing. But this investigation basically uncovered that models were being sent from the US under the assumption that they would break through in the modeling world in Europe. Like that was the place to break through if you're going to be a model. But they ended up just being taken advantage of. About 3/4 of their income from their jobs were being taken by the modeling agency. The modeling agency would like put them up in apartments, but then they would charge them like ridiculous fees. One of the models said that she was in an apartment with 5 other girls and they were each paying $900, but they were like bunking in rooms together. $900 at the time would have been like $2,800 now. So you have 5 girls paying $2,800 in this crappy little apartment in Paris. Like it wasn't anything glamorous. And then the rest of the money, the modeling agency was like, "Oh, I need a fee for this and a fee for that." And you get to take home like $400 at the end of it. I made that number up. I don't know, but they didn't get very much at the end of the day. And then the girls were routinely being drugged and then sexually abused. Most of the girls never complained because if they did, they wouldn't work. And they wanted to be models. That was the whole point of them being in Paris, was for them to be models. So if they complained, they don't work. Now what's the point of them even being there? Now they're being drugged and sexually abused for no benefit at all. Aline Ford of Ford Modeling Agency, and who is known for protecting her girls even in the 1980s, said she had no idea about the conditions in Europe. So she had been sending her girls out to Europe, out to Jean-Luc, to be models in Europe, and they were being treated like crap. So once she found that out, she ended their professional relationship, which was a really big deal. Like she was one of the biggest modeling agencies in the US. So that's the person you want to be in with. And she was like, "Nope, I'm not subjecting my girls to this." Which, like, good on her. Like, we should all give her a round of applause for actually protecting the girls that she was supposed to protect. That was her job. In 2002, he was accused of abuse again when supermodel Karen Mulder described to the French press the culture of sexual misconduct and manipulation that was prevalent in the modeling industry. His name always got brought up. In all of these exposés, Jean-Luc Brunel was one of the names that continued to be brought up. Virginia Giuffre was told by Epstein to give Jean-Luc whatever he wanted. He was like, "You're going to go, you're going to do whatever he wants to do with you." And she got abused by him. She also told of how he was trafficking these girls. Epstein even bragged that he had had sex with over 1,000 of Brunel's girls. In 2015, Brunel actually sued Epstein because MC2 had lost contacts and business in the modeling world due to Epstein's illegal actions. But he was just as much to blame as Epstein was. Like, I feel like he was suing him as like an outward expression of like, "Oh, I don't condone this," but he was condoning it. He was literally helping with it. He was trafficking the girls for Epstein. He was drugging and abusing these girls for decades, even before he ever met Epstein. And he just never got caught. Or not at that time. Not by 2015. And he had got caught by journalists, but he had never been caught by the police. He was never charged with anything. From 1998 to 2005, he was listed as a passenger on Epstein's flight logs 25 times. In 2008, while Epstein was in jail, he visited him at least 70 times. And remember that Epstein was only fully in jail on Sundays. Monday through Saturday, Epstein was out of jail for 12 hours a day. Like he was going to his offices, he was doing whatever he wanted. So Brunel had to log in at the jail 70 times to meet with Epstein. So it makes you wonder, how many times did he meet with Epstein when Epstein's on work release? After the civil suit by Virginia Giuffre against Ghislaine Maxwell, all of Jean-Luc's crimes were out. The documents were unsealed the day after Epstein's death, and Jean-Luc instantly went into hiding. Not long after that, the French National Police launched an investigation into him, and they searched his Paris home and offices in September of 2019. Finally, over a year later, on December 16, 2020, he was intercepted by police at the airport in Paris. He was taken into custody and questioned about rape, sexual assault, criminal conspiracy, and human trafficking. All the allegations included minors. On February 19, 2022, he was found dead in his jail cell of an apparent suicide by hanging, which feels like a copy and paste of what Epstein did. But there are some other weird things about Jean-Luc that I wanted to include. So it's been confirmed that he flew 12-year-old French triplets to Epstein so Epstein could abuse them. That was confirmed. Three girls, 12 years old. So before this, we were like, oh, Epstein only abused like 14 and 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. Nope, 12-year-olds. And Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, acted as a point of contact for Next Management Company. Although he claims he has no idea why he was listed as the company official who files the registration and receives lawsuits and official documents. He was like, I've never done any of those things. I've never even heard of Next Management Company. What is this? However, he was really good friends with Faith Cates, who did, in fact, work with the Brunel brothers. She literally was the founder of Next Management Company. But this guy, Steve Mnuchin, was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea. Never heard of it before. Faith Cates, one of my best friends. Never heard of her company. Stupid. The whole thing is dumb. A little about Steve Mnuchin, by the way. He is an investment banker and film producer who was the Secretary of the Treasury in Trump's first term. His side gig was a film producer at Dune Entertainment, which he founded in 2004. He worked with 20th Century Fox on films such as X-Men and Avatar. Then, when his contract was up with 20th Century Fox, he merged his company with a new founded Rat Pack Entertainment, and they financed films for Warner Bros. This included American Sniper and Mad Max Fury Road. But he has been a producer of some sort on at least 48 films, and these are big films. Like, these are movies that you would know. Like, big feature films. This includes side gig. You're the Secretary of the Treasury and also a film producer? And an investment banker? How do you have time for all of this? And probably messing around with trafficked girls. We just have to assume. We have to assume there's no evidence of that. But let's move on from Jean-Luc Brunel. Obviously, this guy was bad news. He's trafficking these models for Epstein and to Epstein. But Epstein also had a variety of assistants that were helping him with all the girls as well. He described them as being an extension of his brain, saying that their intuition is something he just didn't have. We're going to start with Sarah Kellen. She was mentioned in Ghislaine Maxwell's case as basically doing the same thing as Maxwell, being a mini Maxwell is what they called her. She was said to be the personal assistant of both Epstein and Maxwell by one of Epstein's private pilots. Sarah started working for Epstein and Maxwell in 2002. She worked in his office building on Manhattan's Upper East Side. She scheduled flights, arranged for victims to be on those flights, and scheduled his massages, up to 3 of them a day. She was even accused of taking nude photos of the victims for Epstein. And she became like a little Ghislaine, taking over a lot of her duties so Ghislaine didn't have to do all those things. She was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in Epstein's 2008 non-prosecution agreement. Like, one of the 4 people, he was like, hey, these people get immunity if I take this deal. She was also named in Maxwell's trial as a knowing participant in the criminal conspiracy and that she was a criminally responsible participant. They considered charging her with crimes, especially because they said she was criminally responsible, but they never did. Still to this day, she has never been charged with any crime. Sarah was married to NASCAR driver Brian Vickers, who recently announced they are getting a divorce. In 2022, it was reported that the couple was living in a $5.2 million penthouse in New York and owned a $6.2 million penthouse in Miami. Brian Vickers is worth about $16 million, while Sarah is only worth about $2 million, and she is currently working as an interior designer for a lot of high-end clients in New York, although the clients aren't disclosed. She did say that she has worked with a number of clients in New York, Paris, and the Caribbean. Oddly enough, that's where Epstein had properties and connections. Which makes you wonder, is she working for his clients still? And if so, did she step in to continue his work? She has repeatedly described herself as a victim of Epstein, saying she was raped and she was abused weekly, yet she continued to subject others to the same treatment. So if I'm playing devil's advocate just for a second, maybe she did this, like she helped to facilitate these massages and all these different things to kind of keep the attention off herself. But that still doesn't excuse what she did. And actually, I play the same like advocate for the other assistants that helped to facilitate this trafficking, because I just don't understand how you can be like, I'm a victim, but I'm going to make sure all these other people are victims as well. But I've also never been in the situation, so maybe I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to make it make sense. Either way, she was definitely protected. The compensation fund established after Epstein died protects her from civil litigation from any of the accusers who took money from the program. They cannot go after her and then sue her as well. One last thing about Sarah, she donated to Jeb Bush in 2015, which tells me that she wasn't backing the Democrats, she was backing the Republicans, which I know that everyone keeps saying this is a Democratic issue. You're going to get to the bottom of like the Democratic Party. It's not. It's a bipartisan issue. If we're going to make it political, it's not about this president or that president, all of the presidents hanging out with freaking Jeffrey Epstein. It's about the fact that there's all these people that are high up in our government and every other government, all these people that are running the world are actively enjoying trafficked girls. I don't know how else to put that. Like, I'm trying to put it in the nicest way possible. Lesley Groff was another assistant. She would coordinate travel arrangements with young girls and schedule massage sessions for Epstein, much like Sarah Kellen would do. She was paid $200,000 a year and received a Mercedes and a nanny as a gift after her baby was born, which obviously she was pregnant with while she was working with Epstein. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given her a Mercedes and a nanny. He paid for her nanny. Like Sarah Kellen, she was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 2007 case against Epstein. She was depicted as one of Epstein's enablers in civil lawsuits, and she will not face any criminal charges because they're not going to charge any of those girls. Nadia Marcinkova was allegedly bought from her parents in Eastern Europe by Epstein when she was 15. She was one of his victims until she started working for him. Before she was bought, she was an aspiring model. And I think that's how this whole thing kind of started. Is she wanted to be a model, and then I don't know. I could not verify if Jean-Luc found her, but she wanted to be a model. She went to this modeling agency. They paid her parents some sum of money. They signed over their rights, and off she went to be a model. And I'm sure they probably thought that she would be a model. She ended up being trafficked to Epstein. Maybe that was the point all along. I don't really know. The whole story is kind of secret. And then she became an employee of Epstein. She was an employee and was named as an unindictable co-conspirator in the 2008 case against him, 2007, excuse me. She has now gone on to be a pilot, flight instructor, and CEO of Aviloop, an aviation website. According to the website, quote, Aviloop was founded by a female pilot, Nadia Marcinkova. Her career evolved from marketing through high fashion modeling to aviation. When Nadia was ready for longer runways, she became an aerobatic pilot, licensed flight instructor, and airline transport pilot, ATP, rated on multiple Gulfstream and Boeing aircraft. During her career in aviation, Nadia developed a thorough understanding of the industry and its demands. Since 2011, she has been sharing her expertise through her consulting work at Aviloop, end quote. Her current business is based out of New York, and it is in a property controlled by Mark Epstein, Jeffrey's brother. She visited Epstein over 70 times when he was in Palm Beach custody after his 2008 conviction, just like Jean-Luc did. Did she go with him at the same time? I don't know. Maybe. It's just really weird to me that all these people were written down like, hey, I'm coming to visit Jeffrey Epstein when he literally had work release 6 days out of the week for 12 hours. It kind of makes me wonder, and I don't know a lot about work release. Maybe I should have looked this up. If they had to write down everybody that visited him while he was in the office, because then this makes a little bit more sense. There was another employee named as an unindicted co-conspirator, and her name was Adriana Ross. I don't know a whole lot about Adriana. Juan Alessi was a house manager for Epstein for over 10 years. He cited that Maxwell brought more than 100 young girls to Epstein's home in those 10 years, which we know had to be probably more than 100 girls, but that's what he cited. Well, okay, he also only worked in the Paris home. He didn't work in any of their homes. He said that when he would clean up after the girls left, he found vibrators and sex toys on the massage table, although he claimed to not know they were underage, which I am going to play devil's advocate here for a second. If you're just the house manager, unless you're actively seeing these girls and they look really young, maybe they're of age. Maybe they are just 18 and you're just kind of like, okay, they're doing weird sex stuff in their room. I mean, this is going to sound silly, but if you think of like 50 Shades of Grey and Christian Grey's house manager probably had to clean up his like weird red room, right? Like that was probably weird. Juan probably had to clean up the weird massage room and was like, oh, they're just doing weird sex stuff in here. He might not have known they were underage, and I want to believe that. I want to believe there was some good person in here. But at the end of the day, some of these girls, especially like 12-year-olds, like they look like 12-year-olds. They look young. Shantae Davies accompanied Maxwell and Kellen on the Lolita Express many times and was one of about 160 women whose contact information was kept by Epstein. She was listed as a masseuse, and at the time she was 23 years old, and her LinkedIn shows that she had expertise in Swedish massage. What I think is interesting about her is that she has since become an actress with a role on HBO's Enlightened and has worked as a lingerie model in the film by a softcore porn company. So it makes you kind of wonder, like, who did she meet while she was working with Epstein or for Epstein? Who did she rub shoulders with? Did she work for him on purpose and like do whatever weird thing he wanted? That way she could get to where she wanted to go. That's not completely unheard of, but her name came up, so I wanted to include her. But I want to talk about the housing here for a second. So the epicenter of Epstein's empire had to be at 301 East 66th Street in New York City. Many of the units in that building were owned by Les Wexner and housed Epstein's employees. Lesley Groff, who got the Mercedes and the nanny for having her baby, basically like push presents, she lived in that apartment complex along with Darren Indike, who lived there for almost 9 years. He was the attorney to Epstein, and Sarah Kellen lived in the same apartment building. Nadia Marcinkova lived there, and in fact, she lived there in the apartments even after she founded Avi Loop, which I think Epstein probably helped her found the company. It's not mentioned anywhere. I couldn't find that information, but he paid for her flight lessons. He put her through flight school, and she became his pilot. So she worked with him, was probably trafficked to him until he was like, okay, what are your aspirations? She's like, I want to be a pilot. He's like, cool, I'll pay for it. And then that's what she's done. It's also where they would house the models flown in from Europe that were provided by Brunel. The girls would stay there while the assistants arranged for their work visas, they booked the travel, they arranged for modeling jobs because while they were there, they actually had to model a little bit as they were being trafficked because they needed to bring in money so that way they could pay Epstein to live in the apartment he was renting them. Although they brought them there to traffic them. So, I don't know, the whole thing's very messy. But I want to move on to Virginia Giuffre. I keep mentioning the victim that spoke out the most, but let's take a closer look into Virginia Giuffre. I was going to give her whole own episode, but I thought that this episode would be a perfect place for her to have her little spot. Born Virginia Roberts on August 9th, 1983 in Sacramento, California, she was born to Sky William Roberts and Lynn Trude Cabell. And she also has or had two stepbrothers. When she was 4 years old, the family relocated to Palm Beach County, Florida. At age 7, she started being molested by a close family friend, and eventually this led to her running away because she didn't want to be in that situation anymore. And honestly, I don't blame her at all. It didn't help that her home life was super troubled. I don't think that her parents got along great. I think there was a lot of fighting there. She told the Miami Herald that she went from, quote, an abusive situation to being a runaway to living in foster homes, end quote. She found herself living with Ron Eppinger in Miami at age 14. She lived there for about 6 months. Ron Eppinger ran a modeling agency, Perfect 10, as a front for an international sex trafficking ring. Weird. He knew the police were onto him, so he moved the girls a lot. And at one point, she actually, because she had been drugged, obviously she was being sex trafficked. They didn't want her to get away. But at one point, she could make a phone call. She made a phone call to a friend. It must have been the only number she could remember. She called the friend, was like, "This is where I'm at. Send somebody to come get me." And the friend did, but by the time they got there, they had already moved the girls again. She was eventually moved to a new handler because the police were like super on to Ron. So they moved her to a new handler. Then his townhouse was raided, and that's how she was rescued. And then she was sent to a rehabilitation facility after that. She didn't get to go straight home because she had been drugged. So she had to go to a rehab facility and helped the police get key information about the sex trafficking operation. She gave them as much information as she could. And then eventually she was returned to her family. She tried to go back to school, but her trauma was just so much that she couldn't continue. She finished her freshman year. She had a really bad time finishing her freshman year, and then she dropped out. She was like, "I literally just can't focus on this. This is just so much. I have so much trauma from being trafficked and being molested, and my family life being bad. I can't focus on school." So she dropped out. Well, at the time, her father was working as a maintenance manager at the Mar-a-Lago property owned by Donald Trump. She was engaged, I guess, to some guy. She needed a job. So he helped her get a job at Mar-a-Lago. She was just like folding towels, taking care of the spa area. She was a spa attendant, basically. That's where she met Ghislaine Maxwell. Virginia was apparently reading a book about massage therapy, probably thinking that maybe in the future she would become a massage therapist after high school because she had only worked dead end jobs like flipping burgers at Burger King or whatever. Right now, she worked at Mar-a-Lago as just like the spa attendant. So she wanted more for her life. She started reading these books about massage therapy. This is where she was going to go. Ghislaine was like, "Hey, neat book. Do you want to potentially become a masseuse for this really well-known guy who's my friend? His name's Jeffrey. You don't have to have any experience. We'll train you on everything. You just come and work for us." And she was like, "Oh, like this sounds like the dream. They're going to train me. They're going to send me to school. They're going to teach me how to be a masseuse. This is perfect." So she showed up at Epstein's Palm Beach house, which had been arranged by Ghislaine, and he was lying down naked on the table, which probably seemed pretty normal because most people, when they get massages, lay naked on the table. Not fully naked. People typically have their underwear on, but she probably walked in. She was like, "Okay." And Maxwell then told her how to massage Epstein. In reality, they were grooming her to provide sexual services under the guise of massage therapy. The whole time, she's telling them about her past. She's like, "Yeah, I had this really hard time with this Ron guy. He was trafficking me. I've had a really hard time with my life. It's just been really rough. I'm trying to get out of this situation." They were like, "Wait a second. She is perfect. She's vulnerable. She needs to feel protected. She needs to feel wanted. She's already been physically and sexually abused. So we can just take advantage of her. Let's just make her feel warm and fuzzy here. And then she'll stay with us." And that's kind of what happened. Around the year 2000, Virginia started traveling between Epstein's residences. Not too long after that, they started sharing her with their friends. She told BBC that she was, quote, "passed around like a platter of fruit," end quote. March 2001 was when she was trafficked to Prince Andrew. And remember last week when I said I couldn't figure out why they threw Prince Andrew under the bus? Well, I figured it out. It was to protect the other royals because he just wasn't as important. But that's a whole nother episode for a whole different day because that rabbit hole goes deep. Yeah, it's wild. Anyway, so she claims that she was trafficked to a bunch of powerful people: Glenn Dubin, Alan Dershowitz, Bill Richardson, Marvin Minsky, George J. Mitchell, and Jean-Luc Brunel, just to name a couple of other people. In September 2002, she was sent to Thailand to attend the International Training Massage School. She was given instructions to meet with this one Thai girl to bring her back to the US once she was done with the school. Instead, while she was in Thailand at school, she met an Australian martial arts trainer, Robert Giuffre, and married him. And then she called up Maxwell and Epstein and was like, "Hey, I'm not coming back. I'm just going to go and live with this Robert guy in Australia and just leave me alone. I'm never coming back." And that she did. She moved to Australia with Robert and they started living their life together. They started having kids, they settled down. She just wanted this quiet life that was normal. She just wanted normal. In March 2005, the investigation into Epstein started. But it wasn't until 2007 that Virginia was questioned. She basically got 3 calls back to back. The first 2 were from Maxwell and then Epstein, both wondering if she had talked to the authorities. The third was from the FBI agent who told her that she had been identified as a victim of Epstein's. She didn't say a whole lot over the phone. I can imagine, like, she was probably so re-traumatized by these phone calls being like, hey, don't say anything. Hey, have you talked to the authorities? And then the FBI being like, you've been identified as a victim. She's like, yeah, I know I was a victim. You don't have to tell me. So she didn't say a whole lot over the phone, but she was approached in person by the Australian Federal Police 6 months later, and that's when she was kind of more open about the situation. It took her a few years, and I think maybe she gets a lot of slack for that. Like, why don't you just come out and say everything right away? But trauma has like this weird way of she really probably needed to work through it herself before she could be so open about her story. So in 2011, she had come out to tell her side of the story publicly. She had been a part of lawsuits prior to this, but everything was anonymous. In 2011, she was like, I'm going to start using my name. This is who I am. I really want people to know that this is what's actually happening. And in 2015, she started her nonprofit, Victims Refuse Silence. This nonprofit was aimed at helping victims of sex trafficking reclaim their voices and seek justice, which is exactly what she had to do for years following her abuse. This same year, she filed court documents in a federal lawsuit directly accusing Epstein, Maxwell, and Prince Andrew of sex trafficking and sexual abuse. And these allegations made international headlines. And this could have been the reason that Ghislaine actually went into hiding in 2015. Over the years, Virginia was involved in a number of lawsuits. Some she had filed, some were filed against her. So lawsuits included Alan Dershowitz, Prince Andrew, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, and someone that we haven't talked about yet, Rina O. Maybe it's Rena O. Rena O is a Korean artist based in New York. So I went to her website because I wanted to know a little bit more about Rena. Who is this girl? The background picture of her homepage, by the way, are 8 porcelain red shoes in a circle, which I was like, huh, weird. Rena O actually sued Virginia for defamation, and after she claimed that Rena was helping to traffic children, Rena was like, no, I was a victim of Epstein as well. But the suit got dismissed. In 2019, after the arrest and death of Epstein, Virginia found her story to be popularized again. Everyone wanted to know just what happened. In 2024, Virginia and Robert Giuffre decided to separate. In April 2025, she publicly claimed that her husband abused her for many years. And there are court records to back this up. So they lived in Colorado in 2015 just for a little while. And while they were there, he actually pleaded guilty to domestic violence and was placed on probation for domestic violence, but no other charges were filed against him. In January 2025, he got violent with her when they got together to celebrate one of their children's birthdays. So they had been separated before this. Then apparently she violated a restraining order in February. Following that, she wasn't allowed to see her kids anymore. On March 24th, 2025, Virginia was in a car accident with a bus traveling at about 70 miles an hour. This accident allegedly sent her into renal failure, and she was only given like 4 days to live. But then, like, this accident is weird in and of itself because I guess the police were called to the accident, but no one ever showed up. And then she was taken to the hospital but discharged. But she was discharged with renal failure and only had 4 days to live. And they were like, yeah, go about your life. That's just really weird. And then she didn't only live 4 days. She lived at least a month more because about a month later, a little over a month later, on April 25th, 2025, Virginia Giuffre died by suicide in her home. And it's not said, like, what method of suicide. Did she hang herself? Because we've already seen that with Jean-Luc Brunel, and we've seen that with Jeffrey Epstein. So it's really odd. The whole thing is very, very weird. Many people are not sure it was suicide, including herself, actually. So she left a recording for if she died unexpectedly. And it starts out, quote, if you're watching this, that means they got me. My dead man switch activated automatically after I missed 2 scheduled check-ins. I had it set up months ago because I knew this day was coming. I did not die by accident. I was murdered to keep their secrets buried, end quote. She goes on to point to people she saw on the island, like Barack Obama and Bill Gates. She says that Jeffrey Epstein isn't dead. She also claimed that more data would be coming out, that it was time delayed and would drop on certain days. So far, we haven't gotten any more information that she has promised. But Virginia Giuffre's credibility has been called into question. I can understand wanting to speak out about the evils done to you. I get that. But she didn't drop any names that we didn't already know. I mean, we do have her to thank for pointing the finger to Prince Andrew and maybe Alan Dershowitz, but if she had information that was so big they killed her over it, why did they wait so long? Because she pointed to Prince Andrew and Alan Dershowitz years ago. I mean, like in 2011, 2012, 2014, like all these years, she's pointing to Alan Dershowitz. She's pointing to Prince Andrew. She's pointing to these big names. And nothing was done. She has been speaking out about this for 13 years. She's been the public face of the Jeffrey Epstein victims, basically. Probably the biggest name of the Jeffrey Epstein victims. She's had interviews with huge networks, documentaries on Lifetime and Netflix. So why didn't they kill her then? Why didn't they kill her when she was doing these big documentaries, these big interviews? Why would they wait so long? I mean, she even got a huge payout from Prince Andrew to settle a lawsuit against him, and they didn't kill her then. So why now? Unless she was a puppet all along. Maybe she was just a distraction. Like, they gave us this victim, so we would all focus on her and assume the trafficking had stopped because she was talking out about Epstein, when Epstein was just one trafficker and she was only one victim. And granted, there were other victims that came out. Several people got money from the Epstein victim program, right? Like, there were other victims that got money from that, and maybe they didn't want to speak out, and I get that. But where are all the other victims? Because there's only like 100 victims that have gotten money from this program. And maybe they don't want to come out, right? Like, maybe they don't want to talk about their situation, and I can respect that. But still, they have all of our focus on just Virginia and just Epstein and Maxwell. Who are we not seeing when we are focusing on them? What are we not seeing? Because I feel like there's this huge picture. They're like, yep, it was Epstein. It was Ghislaine Maxwell. Virginia Giuffre was a victim. Look, we have a victim. We have somebody that's actually spoken out. They've given some names, so we know that there's some names. But if she knew a lot of people, why didn't she name drop all those people? Right? And I had to think about this for a minute. Maybe she didn't see that many people because she only was with Epstein for like 2-ish years. So maybe she really didn't see that many people. Maybe she named all the people that she did see. But it just seems weird that all these things would happen. They didn't kill her. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like out of nowhere, she wasn't dropping new names. That's when she gets killed. And then even in this video that she leaves after she dies, her dead man switch, she's still only dropping Barack Obama and Bill Gates, which we can put those pieces together ourselves. So we're like, where are the names? Who are you not pointing to? What are they trying to bury that you know? Because it hasn't come out yet. Maybe I just haven't waited long enough. I don't know. It's just very convenient. Next week, we're going to wrap this thing up. It's going to be kind of like a miscellaneous episode. All the things that I found during my research, I didn't really have a place to put, will be next week. All the things that I found that I had already put somewhere, like if we have like something with science that I found after the science episode, all those things will go into next week's episode. The week after that, we're going to talk about Robert Maxwell, and then we're going to be done with Epstein. We're going to finish this thing. I know it's been such a journey, but we're almost there. So until next week, my friends, stay skeptical, and I will see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Danny Mercy. I appreciate all of your support. Please rate and review wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at rabbit.holepodcast. And thank you, Zakar Balaha, for our awesome intro.